Welcome everybody, and hello to my listeners, and hello to everybody who is listening in the ether, wherever in the world you may well be. Delighted to welcome Jeremy Dalton from PwC today.
Hi everyone.
Hello. And today we're going to be talking about we're going to talk about XR, extended reality, which is around VR and AR. Jeremy is the head of VR and AR at PwC. He's also the author of his new book, which is coming out in January of next year, I believe. Reality Check, a book about extended reality in business. So enough about me. Jeremy, over to you. Your story. You started out life as an auditor. So how does an auditor move into the world of VR and AR within an accounting firm?
It's a funny journey, Alex. So I did start my life in the audit practice in PwC, and that was back in 2011. And it was only ever meant to be a 6-month training period, because originally I had applied to do work in the business recovery practice of the firm. Not that makes it any easier to understand the connection to virtual reality, but it helps to understand how I jumped from audit to business recovery after a 6-month trial period. Now, while I was in business recovery, I did an accountancy qualification. So technically, I'm a chartered accountant as well, which confuses things even further. But basically, what happened is I spent about two and a half years in business recovery. And it was a very engaging sort of role. It was very exciting. It was very interesting. No 2 days were the same, and that kept me engaged. But after about two and a half years, I wanted to do something that was more closely related to my area of passion, which was technology. Mm-hmm. Now, in PwC, there are so many different teams and groups and all sorts of people doing all sorts of things. So naturally, they did actually have a technology practice at the time. Mm-hmm. And even more interesting to me, they had a budding emerging technologies practice. So I made a contact there, got introduced to the head of the emerging technologies practice at the time. And I was so taken in by their work and really keen to work with them that I started doing bits and pieces in my spare time for that team. Mm-hmm. So I would be a business recovery consultant by day and an emerging technologies consultant by night. And eventually this resulted in me joining the team when one of their team members had left, and they found an opportunity elsewhere in a different part of the world. And so they had a space, and I was the first person on their mind because I had been helping them out for a while then. So I slotted in quite nicely. And while I was there, I got involved in all sorts of stuff. I got involved in innovation around different emerging technologies. So I was looking at artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, blockchain, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. But I felt that I wanted to add even more value by focusing on a particular area. So I started to look at all of these different technologies, and virtual reality and augmented reality these two technologies very closely related, were the ones that I felt would have a significant impact on both our personal and professional lives. So I started pushing in that direction. I started using my spare time at that point to explore the technologies, to purchase them, to experience them, to build, basic applications for them, to try out other people's applications, to speak to the community, to speak on behalf of the community at small talks here or there. So slowly I built a brand in the virtual reality and augmented reality space. And long story short, in September 2017, after many years of campaigning in PwC, they finally gave me the remit to take on the role of leading a virtual reality and augmented reality practice in the firm, which I'm very happy to say that today is flourishing beautifully. We've got a large team of in-house developers, 3D artists, animators, 360 video production and post-production capability, as well as our business consultants that specialize in the technology. And we do projects all over the world with clients in different industries. So it's been a whirlwind ride around different routes through the firm, but it's been a fun one. And I guess what makes me stay at the firm is I have a good team. I have faith in leadership, and I enjoy the culture of the firm most of all. So it's a great base, and virtual reality and augmented reality is my passion area. So I kind of have all the boxes checked, and I'm very, very lucky in that from that point of view.
That is awesome to hear, and being a former employee of PwC as well, I can absolutely attest. It's a great firm to work for a great culture. It's great to see that they've allowed people like you to flourish and develop the passion in our practice group around VR and AR. If you said that to me when I was at the firm 10 years ago, I probably would have gone, VR, what? That's the lawnmower man, isn't it? Talking of all of this, then let's kind of get into this for the listeners who may not necessarily truly understand the difference between VR and AR. In layman's terms, what's virtual reality and what's augmented reality?
So virtual reality is all about immersing you in a completely different environment or time. And augmented reality is about information. It's about overlaying information on top of your real world or physical environment. And the ways that you consume both of those technologies can be very different. So you can experience virtual reality on a headset or a head-mounted display. You can experience virtual reality through a projection system around your on the four walls and the ceiling and the floor of the room you're in. You can experience augmented reality through a headset, but you can also experience augmented reality through a handheld device like a mobile phone or tablet. So there are lots of different ways of consuming the technology, but ultimately the best way of defining it, I find, is in terms of what the objectives of the technology are. And virtual reality is for immersion, augmented reality is about information.
That's interesting. I've never had it explained that way, and I think that's just a really nice, simple way to actually explain it. I've always tried to think virtual reality. Yes, I kind of get that. AR has always been. That's a really nice word, information overlay in terms of what you're already seeing. I think that's really great. And so, what led you to want to write the book? And it says here that you will 5 areas that you will cover off in the book. So an understanding of VR and AR applications in business, data for academic and corporate studies on the subject, common misconceptions which are discussed and debunked, how to mitigate challenges when deploying, and a beginner's guide to creating 360 video, and number 6, I should say, insights on why now is the right time for VR and AR. So what do you want to pick out of those in terms of, was any of those the reason to write the book, or was it, I want to write a book because I want to become a best-selling author?
I don't think I ever had visions of becoming a best-selling author. And even now, about a month and a week away from selling the book, I still don't have such visions. But I am hoping that the people who pick up the book will perhaps learn something that they didn't know before, particularly around how pervasive and how valuable these technologies are in a business context. Okay. So loads of people have heard of virtual reality and augmented reality from the perspective of entertainment and media, from video games, from the perspective of, let's say, leisure time, basically, a fun thing. But what I'm trying to explain in this book is that actually virtual reality is that, but also more than that. And in fact, the entertainment side of things is really the tip of the iceberg. Below the waterline, the massive amount of applications and contribution to the global economy of virtual reality and augmented reality comes from their applications in business. So to give you a few examples there, you can use virtual reality from a training perspective. You can use augmented reality to help you to perform a task on a piece of machinery that you've never used before. You can use virtual reality to put you in a different environment, so you can supervise, let's say, the construction of a new home or a new office or whatever the site is. You can use both technologies to help your teams around the world come together in a shared space, what feels like a shared experience and shared space, to make changes to, let's say, in the automotive industry, a vehicle. You're looking at the latest vehicle design. It's there in front of you in digital form, and it's one-to-one scale, and you can go over and open the virtual doors. You can sit in the vehicle. You can put your hands on the steering wheel and get an idea of all the control systems and how far it is to, stretch your hand to the buttons on the dashboard. what field of view you can see in the windscreen, all of this sort of stuff, which without this technology would have required, and this is a true story from the automotive industry, would have required someone to create a clay model of that vehicle.
Right.
And that whole process takes a long time. It costs a lot of money. And the only way of getting around that is to present a 3D model on a screen. But imagine how much more limiting that is, presenting a 3D model on a small screen that is obviously not one-to-one scale versus being able to actually walk around the vehicle in your own environment or in a virtual environment at a one-to-one scale and collaborate with people from all over the world who are doing the same thing to then speed up the process and effectively result in bringing that product to market much more quickly and much more inexpensively. So there's loads of applications, and really, again, that is just a few of them to illustrate the power of VR and AR. There are many, many more.
Is there because hearing you talking around, automotive manufacturing, huge amounts of money invested in that, and therefore, even though the car industry isn't necessarily the biggest margins in the world and so on, and moving to electric and all that kind of fun stuff. But if you're a small to medium-sized business and you're thinking about, let's say, training, and I have noticed on one of your earlier blogs around actually immersive training and how that can be stickier versus maybe kind of this environment we're in now. How easy is it for an organization to just kind of spin up a virtual reality kind of training center per se? What sort of things do they need to think about from a technology standpoint, a costing standpoint, supporting tools and services, etc.?
So I'm not going to lie, it's not a super simple process, but no major transformation program or IT program, investment program in an organization ever is. No. And virtual reality is no different. For it to have a significant effect on the organization, they're going to have to invest some time and some money in and buy into that solution. But at the same time, it doesn't need to be super expensive either. One of the great things that we advocate about in PwC, and I mention it in this book as well, is you can start small. You don't have to go from not using virtual reality at all to suddenly having every single employee, in your organization using it for training purposes. You can start with, let's say, one team in one division, 10, 20, 50 people, that sort of range, test it out with them. And then off that little experiment, that little trial or pilot, you can understand, what are the issues we faced on that? Did it really hit home? If it didn't, why didn't it? How much did we spend? Based on that, how much are we realistically expecting to spend if we roll this out further? From that information, you can actually build a significant and accurate business case to then help you take the investment to the next level. Or alternatively, if it's proven that it hasn't worked, it's still a win for you because you've tested out a new technology which had some potential which you wanted to explore, but it didn't work, and perhaps it needs to be iterated on. But if you absolutely after that see that it just can't work for whatever reason, then you've learned something at least without having to invest millions and millions of dollars on a program with a large amount of people that was destined to fail. So even that is a win in itself.
Absolutely. And do you need, the full-on Oculus Rift kind of headsets in order to kind of start this, or can you use? I've seen the cardboard kind of cutout things you put your phone into and kind of hold it up like that, kind of what have you, to get a sense of what's what.
So there are many different types of headsets out there, and I'd say starting from the beginning, there's the cardboard style headsets, and they're either literally made of cardboard with lenses glued into them, where you can shove your phone and get a rudimentary virtual reality experience. And I'd say the next level up is a standalone headset, which doesn't require any other sort of materials, phones, computers, sensors. It's just you put it on your head, you take your controllers in your hands, and you're ready to go, basically. The next level up from that is a more powerful system, which actually is not standalone. It's called a tethered system, and it requires a computer or a console to run, basically some external computing system to run. Now, those tend to be a little bit more complicated. You sometimes need external sensors to track how you're moving. and they require you to be cabled up most of the time to a PC. There are some solutions to get around that with wireless connections, but it tends to get quite complicated very quickly. Now, I'd say each of those serves different purposes. A lot of people discount the cardboard style headsets, and I have to agree, for most cases in businesses, you're not going to want to use cardboard headsets or the plastic equivalents because they're generally not durable enough. They're difficult to build for because you have to cater to everyone's mobile phone, and they're difficult to deploy as a result as well. So the next level up though is the standalone headsets. Now those are quite nice because they're right in the middle. They're not super powerful, but they're good enough in a lot of cases to provide you with a powerful training experience or whatever it is you're trying to build. So that solution in the middle tends to be the one that we champion as much as possible. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the tethered headsets, they're more complicated, but they are more powerful. Sometimes it does make sense to use them. So for example, NASA is working with a Finnish virtual reality headset manufacturer called Vario. Now that they have a top of the line sort of very high end headset, which the reason they're using it is because it's so powerful and it allows you such a clarity of view that those astronauts can actually read the text labels on the buttons of the spacecraft they're training to use.
Wow.
So you can't do that in all of these virtual reality headsets, particularly not at the middle or lower level. So you need that high-end power to be able to conduct that sort of training. So I would say in summary, cardboard, generally not used in business. However, there is one actual use case I've seen where it works very well, and that's in the research space, because you can send them out in the post box, get people to open them up. They only need to spend a minute in there to have a look around and answer a survey. Works perfectly for that. On the other end, the really powerful stuff to be used in really sort of high-end and necessary applications like astronaut. Yeah, exactly. And then in the middle, you've got the standalone headsets, which should work for a lot of business cases, and they're being used a lot in business nowadays.
And so what, in terms of training, again, kind of in my world, professional services, in terms of what I do, training it's a blend of kind of share screen, but pushing buttons, how to, but it's also as much kind of the knowledge transfer and behavior change. So it's actually getting people to shift their thinking and their thought processes. And I think COVID and the world that we're now in, historically I'd have been on site with clients in a classroom, and it's been a real kind of journey for me to kind of, how do you create an immersive but engaging environment in Zoom or Teams, which is really, really hard to do. I've operated 150% energy levels all the time, which is How do you believe that as we move through this into what the future holds, where is this going to become just part and parcel of large organizations that can see it working and invest in it? This will just become part of classroom training, do you believe?
So I believe so, but I would also say that we are not going to see the end of classroom training or e-learning, despite the sort of results we may see from various studies. In fact, we released a study, and I don't know if you caught it, but it was around the effectiveness of virtual reality for soft skills training. So we conducted training on the same subject, so inclusivity in the workplace, and we already had an e-learn and a classroom version available, which we were running with PwC staff. Then we built, using the same content, a virtual reality equivalent for those learners. And we studied the differences between all three groups. And what we found is that VR learners were 4 times faster to train than in the classroom. They were 275% more confident to apply the skills they learned after their training, 3.75 times more emotionally connected to the content than classroom learners, and 4 times more focused than their e-learning peers. So despite that, however, it's important to recognize that virtual reality is not the silver bullet training solution in all cases. It works very well for soft skills training, and it works quite well for practical skills training as well, hard skills.
Yeah.
But for a lot of things where perhaps you need a classroom based environment for whatever reason, or an e-learning environment where it's good enough, let's say, to do it via e-learning, that's absolutely fine. There's no need to replace that and go to the effort of implementing a VR training system when those methods will suffice, and in many cases may be cheaper. So it depends on your organization, how many people you're looking to train as well. Because from a cost perspective, we also found that virtual reality can be more cost effective, but at scale.
Right, okay.
At the very beginning, like when you have, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 learners, virtual reality is more expensive per learner than both classroom and e-learning. But as you go up, as you go to 100, 200, at 375 learners, VR training actually becomes the same cost per learner as classroom training. And at 1,950 learners, VR training achieves cost parity with e-learning. But again, you have to be the type of organization that is ready to implement the training at that level, and virtual reality has to be the right medium for the type of training you're trying to run to be useful. So I wouldn't necessarily advocate virtual reality for risk-based training, for example, in PwC, where a lot of it requires an understanding of compliance, of regulation out in the market, and there's not necessarily particular scenarios to apply it to very strongly. You could create scenarios, but would we be able to see the return on investment of doing that? I'm not sure yet. We haven't done that study, but I would imagine it wouldn't be as strong as soft skills training and practical skills training.
It's back to the old adage: don't use tech for tech's sake.
Exactly.
Use tech where tech is going to enable you to do things more effectively and more efficiently, but don't do it. I remember back in my law firm days, we need an app. Why do we need an app? Well, I don't know, we just need an app to do this. The customers want an app. I'm like, really? You sure? I don't think so. No one's really asking for an app.
Absolutely.
And AR then. So AR is kind of that information overlay in the real world. So Pokemon Go is the one that kind of springs to mind in terms of from an entertainment perspective when this blew up kind of properly. And then we were chatting about my daughter's hidden Lego, where you build a little Lego model, get their app, and then it comes to life on that side of things. But AR, again, from a business context, I'm yet to wrap my head around how that might work. So no doubt you will enlighten me. Absolutely.
I mean, you can use AR in so many different ways. So I mentioned augmented reality from a potential collaboration perspective. You can also use augmented reality from a remote assistance perspective. Okay. So in other words, not needing to have a senior individual in an organization there with you face to face or face to face with every single field worker, for example, to tell them how to do something, because you can remotely connect in and see through their field of view what they're looking at, and actually annotate on their environment all the cables they need to cut or pull away, the plugs they need to plug things into. All of that is just really powerful as a use case for augmented reality. The other thing I'd say is augmented reality can be used as a research tool. So it can be used to help understand how are consumers using different products, or how do they find the branding on different products. So as when you're walking through a store and you pick up a can of baked beans, let's say, and there are two different brandings on it, you're like, which one do you find most engaging? You can actually use your own mobile phone to put that can of baked beans on your table and then see can A and can B, and then answer the question, well, I prefer can B, that one catches my eye more. So it can be used from a consumer research perspective. It can be used from a marketing and advertising perspective. And this is really cool because especially now during COVID and lockdown, we're not able to visit stores as often as we'd like. But using augmented reality, those vendors, those retailers can actually bring some of these products into our physical environment and help us envisage how they would fit within our real world. So for example, if I were looking to buy a laptop or a printer or a coffee machine or a sofa, I could use my mobile phone and bring those items at a one-to-one scale and put them the coffee machine on my kitchen counter. I could put the laptop on my table. I could put the sofa in my living room. So it helps to encourage consumers to be more confident with those purchases.
Very cool, very cool. I mean, in terms of, I've seen it from a marketing perspective, where I can't remember, forgive me, shows how marketing works, right? But it's a brand of what Australian wine based on criminals from way back when, and then you download the app and then you hold it, and then the criminal, he comes to life and starts telling the story of his story and the wine.
That was 19 Crimes, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was good. I remember that. Yeah, it brings it to life a little bit.
I think that IKEA are now doing that. You can put your sofa in here and
absolutely, yeah. IKEA Place is the application that they have released for that functionality.
And then I'm guessing, in terms of like in the field examples that you were giving, that as I'm thinking about it, makes sense. Would they wear like a Google Glass or was it the Microsoft HoloLens type sort of thing? You do need to be wearing some kind of lens, as it were.
Usually, you would wear a head-mounted display. You can use a mobile phone, but the reason you mostly see field workers wearing the head-mounted display version is because then it keeps their hands free. Yeah, to be able to perform the task that you're trying to perform, instead of holding up a mobile to the scene and then trying to hold your mobile while performing the action. It's just a bit awkward that way.
Indeed. And have you, since lockdown, we can't escape it, right? Since kind of COVID and the pandemic, when we were recording this, the 23rd of November 2020, have you seen an increase in client inquiries around how can we use, of course, everything we've talked about? Has there been an increase in inquiries around this for you and the PwC teams to help businesses?
Eventually there was, but I'd say at the very beginning in March and a little bit of April, we actually received a massive downturn in inquiries. And I suspect that was because businesses were, quite shocked by the massive change and the transformation that they would then need to undertake within their organizations, not necessarily from a technological perspective, but just from a ways of working perspective and getting to grips with that. It took a bit of time, so I don't think they had any mind space to think about, innovative solutions like virtual reality and augmented reality. But when the dust settled after that period, we then started to receive the inquiries again, and then it led to an increase. It eventually superseded the amount of inquiries we had received pre-pandemic. So eventually it did increase interest in the technology, but only after going through an initial downturn, probably due to a shock factor.
Yeah, indeed. And so your book is out worldwide, no less. 3rd of January. Forgive me, I haven't written a book more than I've ever done. 3rd of January 2021, available.
Yeah, that's right.
Everywhere, I'm guessing.
It's 3rd of January. It will be available outside of the US and Canada.
Okay.
And it's actually 28th of January that the US and Canada version will release.
Fantastic. I'll add the link to your blog post to this podcast and vlog afterwards. Before I let you go, Jeremy, what's the weirdest kind of VR, AR kind of request or thing that you've had someone ask you, keeping it clean, of course? What's the strangest kind of request, or the strangest, I guess, use of it that you've seen?
Yeah. So I had a fairly amusing request. Where someone wanted to use virtual reality to train their Salesforce team. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Salesforce is a customer relationship management platform. It's like a database of customers, and you access it on your web browser.
Oh, I see. So they wanted to train. So we're talking the CRM system. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So they wanted to use virtual reality to train how to use a web-based customer relationship dashboard. And I thought,
what?
I had to figure out the kindest and politest way to reject that request, because it was just never going to work, and it would be, I could see the ending then and there, and it would be disastrous. Yeah. So I wanted to stop them before they got on that journey. And thankfully they did. They listened and they pursued other directions. Yeah. But that's definitely the most amusing one, let's say, that I've heard.
Yeah, that feels like the knee-jerk reaction. We need VR to do this.
Exactly. Just like the app thing you were talking about before.
Brilliant. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for affording your time today. Really, really appreciate it. I know there's obviously way more to this than we touched on, but I was just keen to get you on just to kind of start the conversation, because I believe that this is the way the world is going. And so looking at my 5-year-old daughter in terms of how she interacts with Google and Netflix and the TV, let alone now her AR Lego. But where can people find you, Jeremy? Where's the best people to connect with you?
So you can connect to me probably on LinkedIn would be quite good. If you search for Jeremy Dalton PwC, that will take you to my profile. And then Twitter, if you want, my handle is Jeremy Dalton XR.
Perfect. I will add all those links to this vlog and this podcast. But Jeremy, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Alex. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And to all my listeners, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. As ever, if there's anybody who you think should be on this podcast, blimey, get a grip, Alex. Let me know. Drop me a link. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the day wherever you may be in the world.